Have you ever wondered what exact steps to take to learn blues guitar? Often guitarists discover the basics like how to read tabs, major and minor scales, a few chords, and maybe even a bit of the pentatonic. But when they go online to learn blues guitar, they'll find a video focuses just on one thing, and there may be pre-requirements to that video that the instructor either assumes that they know or the student might not know, and then they get stuck. Or they don't know where to go next. Now this is very frustrating. So in this video, I wanted to share with you 3 easy steps, what I believe to be the best way to learn blues guitar. And this is something that I've developed over the past 25 plus years of teaching and playing professionally. So let's get started. The first step is unlocking the freedom palette. Now, what is this freedom palette, you may be saying? Well, it's something that I learned from my old mentor, Kenny Burrell, and he was one of the greatest blues guitar players of the 20th century. And he saw the blues and this specific framework that I'm talking about as like a palette that a musician could use. If you thought of like a painter, right? They have sort of these colors out in front, and once you start understanding how it works, the blues opens a door, and any artist can use this framework to express themselves, and it lets other musicians and listeners look in at who you are as a player. And what you do with this freedom palette shows your story and what you have to say. Now, this is a fundamental of blues guitar mastery. You have to become familiar with the basic chord progressions, the rhythms, and even being able to plug in some lead guitar. And you do this all before you learn any scales. You see a lot of times players, when it comes to lead guitar, they want to jump straight into scales. But there's a way to actually plug into what I call the language of the blues. And the way that I show my students is much more practical versus theoretical. So I'll give you an example. You could learn a million blues patterns all over the neck, but you could also try playing lead with something as simple as like, and that sounds a lot more like authentic blues than, say, playing the pentatonic. Just listen to that, and now listen to this. Now, when I played all of that, I wasn't actually thinking about, say, all this fancy stuff that's going on. I got the note D to B, and then E on top, and then D flat to B flat with E on top. So you can see as I'm explaining it, I'm kind of like going, okay, what are the notes? D, and I do it. I'm a lot slower than if I just play it, right? I'm not thinking about all those notes in the moment. I'm going after a feeling, and I'm just getting right to it. And that's what I mean by this practical sort of plug and play. Now, it's not going to hurt you to learn all that theory, but I'm not really thinking about that when I play. From there, you want to move on to number 2, and this is learning bass lines and riff patterns. And this comes together with step 1. So for example, if I played a riff like this. Then I go. So I'm following a blues form, but I'm playing it with riffs and patterns. And once you start putting this together with step 1, you really connect the two. And I could say step 1, but you don't really fully understand step 1 until you start adding in step 2 and start adding in step 3. So all of these build together. Now, if you've struggled with understanding some of these fundamentals of blues, then go to johnmcclennan.com/bluescales and get your hands on my free blues scale PDF guide. This is going to show you the easiest and fastest ways to start playing the blues scale up and down the neck, which is essential scale for the blues. And it actually has to do with step number 3, which is scales and vocabulary. So you have to learn the patterns on the fretboard that Eric Clapton used, B.B. King used, Freddie King, you know, all the greats played a lot of the same notes. They just did it in their own way. So you have to understand how that connects in. And again, going to johnmcclennan.com/bluescales is going to help you with that. It's going to get you started. Now from there, you actually have to start learning, once you learn the patterns, you have to start learning what I call vocabulary. And this ties back in with the point I was saying earlier about dropping in, you know, phrases and stuff like, you could, you know, play scale patterns, right? Like, or you could learn phrases like, or, right? So it starts sounding like the blues, and that has to do with learning the language and the vocabulary. And a lot of players miss out on this, especially when they think that, you know, learning a bunch of theory or memorizing a bunch of patterns is going to get them there. It actually won't. You have to learn vocabulary. And players that don't end up with scale-ish sounding solos that are boring and dull. I actually have a name for it. I call it pentatonic purgatory, and that's where players get stuck playing the same patterns over and over, and they don't really feel like their licks have just that guts and feeling to it. And some players stay in pentatonic purgatory for 40 years, and some never even escape. So you have to make sure you follow these steps in order. And these are things that I help students do all the time, and it's something that I've used myself as well. It's helped me be able to play the way that I wanted. And if you want to learn more about this, then go to johnmcclennan.com/bluescales. Get your hands on my free blues scale PDF guide. You'll learn more there about how you can put all this together. As always, hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you might like this one next.